Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Apples and Genos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. My name is Nate Niblink. I'm the creator of Apples and Genos, originator of the Zero G Draft Strategy. And in this podcast, Blake and I are going to review our 2024-25 projections, compare them to industry experts, and see what we can improve for next season. Let's get it. And of course, I have your friend and my best friend. It's Blake Creamer. Blake, how are we feeling tonight?
I feel awesome, buddy. It's always a good day when I get to sit down and talk some fantasy puck with my best friend, my one, my only, my everything. You know this. But damn, this offseason's hitting a little bit weirder for me. It feels like, we're just we haven't done very many pods together. So it's
true.
like, I've been kind of missing that routine, and I don't know. This episode in particular is one of my favorites because, I feel like that's something that we offer that I don't know, you might not get everywhere else, is like projections and accountability, right? And I think that's a really important piece, and I'm excited to get into with you, buddy.
I am too. I know, I feel like a lot of people will turn on an episode like this and be like, projections. I don't know how interesting this is going to be, but I do think it's important for the reasons you mentioned. But also, I do think that there is some really interesting things to think through here and some stuff that we'll be able to talk about. Things that we missed in projections that I think will actually be
Yeah.
informative for people, stuff that we'll want to remember when we start to build projections for next year, which honestly is not that far away. So yeah, I think there'll be good stuff for people to think about, for them to, even to re-examine us critically as we talk about players for next year. Stuff we talk about in this episode, are we making the same mistakes again? So I think there is good stuff in here for the true fantasy hockey diehards who are listening to projection review episodes in May. This one is absolutely for you.
Let's go.
Let's do it. The basis of the episode here, we're going to go through first off an evaluation of our projections. And so, how we're going to do that is on a per game basis. We're going to value the categories: goals, assists, points, penalty minutes, hits, blocks, shots, all the things that we projected. We're going to evaluate our per game rate basically versus each other, but also versus three different quote unquote industry experts, I guess. I've done this in years past with Dom Decision, so I'm using his stuff again. I know a lot of people like to use his work. I also got Dauber. I've got access to his projections, so I've included his here for us to compare to, and also Steve Laidlaw, who makes his projections publicly available every year as well. So I've got kind of three different sources this time around, which is an upgrade over years past. But I thought it was kind of important just to kind of cast that bigger net this year, and I'm happy to do that this year, and to see if we're totally out on a limb here with what we're putting out versus what else you can get commonly out there. So that's the kind of methodology here. Just briefly on why we chose to evaluate on a per game basis. I think that that's basically the best way to view it for fantasy purposes, right? Like, if you chose this player when they're in your lineup, how are they performing? Were they performing close to what our projections said they were? Yes or no? That's kind of what I'm hoping to accomplish with my projections, what Blake is hoping to accomplish with his projections, to try to give you that median projection of what we think this player's capable of doing. And so I think that's the best way to evaluate projections at the end of the day, is on a per game basis when you're using them for fantasy. We talk about not trying to predict injuries here, and we didn't want to, potentially in some years overvalue our projections if we happen to, predict injuries better one year versus another.
Right.
Like that, we don't want that to be kind of clouding the noise of how good are the projections at a base level. And so that's why we're going with the per game metric here. If you have some thoughts on that, or if you think we should be using some other metric to kind of evaluate our projections, I'd be interested in your thoughts and your reasoning. So definitely you can comment that on the episode here. But without further ado, let's dig in here. So, as I mentioned, we'll be going by goals, assist points, category by category here and kind of working our way through it. So, in total, there were 262 players that all five of us evaluated, projected. So, this is the sample size basically here for all the players that each of us projected individually. And for goals, we'll start there. Very tight is the first thing that I wanna notice here. So basically, the way that I evaluate this is I took the error on a per game basis. So like goals per game, right? What did they actually score? What did each player actually score versus what did we project them for on a per game basis? And then what's the error? What's the difference between the actual and the projection? And then I took an average of all of that error, right? And so the average of all that error across all 262 players gives you your kind of total error, and you can kind of use that as your evaluation. And then I've also, just to have some sort of an idea of how much error that really is, I've divided the absolute error for each of us, absolute average error, I guess I should say, for each of us by the actual number. I know I'm getting deep in the weeds here, but that gives you just like how much error there is relative to the actual amount that they scored, right? So how much of the actual that they scored is taken up by the error,
Thank
if that
goodness for
makes
people
sense.
like you, Nate. Oh my God. God bless you, sir.
That may or may not land for you, but basically, I'm just trying to relate how much error there is relative to how much they're actually doing. So the error is significant. It always will be. We're not trying to say that we're amazing at this. We will always have some pretty significant error here, but regardless, that's what you see on the screen if you're looking on YouTube here. But for goals specifically, of the five analysts here, I was number one, 23.9% error on my average projection there across the 262 players. Number two is Steve Laidlaw, 24.2%, so literally 0.3% difference there, very tight. Number three was Dom Lucision, 24.6. Blake was fourth, 25.0, and Dauber fifth at 26.0. Pretty tight, quite honestly, here, especially across the top four from me to Blake, just 1.1% difference between the four of us encapsulated there. So that is quite tight, I would say, at the top. So relatively speaking, I think we're happy with that. I mean, we'd love to be 1-2, 1-2, 1-2 on all of these projections across every category. That's never going to be how it goes. Just by
There's always
um,
next year.
there's always next year, but that's going to be pretty tough to do consistently year to year with all the variance that there is in this game. But overall, I think we're pretty happy with that, and we're showing we're right there with Laidlaw, Lucian, Dauber, all these other analysts. So that's goals. Assists, a little bit different. Blake is number one here,
Oh, yeah.
22.9% error. Laidlaw, number two, 23.2%. I was number three, 23.6%. And Lucian also comes out to 23.6%, but must have been just a couple tenths of a percentage point beyond. He comes in fourth there. And then Dauber, 25.3% error there. So this one, obviously, Blake jumps to the top here, but again, you see from Blake at 22.9% to Dom Lucian at 23.6%, 0.7% difference between Blake and Lucian for all four of us at the top. Really, really tight at the top. So again, I think that's a really good showing. And then I'll go through the points here too, and then I want to stop and kind of talk about this because I think this is kind of the meat of it, right? This is what everybody's really looking for in the projections: the goals, assists, the points. So in total points, I was number one there, 18.8%. Total error, Laidlaw, 18.9%. Lucian, 19.3%. Blake, 19.4%. So 0.6% total error difference between number one and number four. And then Dauber was there at 20.3%. So 0.9% back of Blake there. Yeah, basically my number one takeaway here is that this is really really tight, and I think that just like the variation of any individual NHL season, like it would not surprise me to see these numbers flipped exactly amongst us top four here next year. Like any combination of the four would make sense to me for goals, for assists, for points next year. Obviously, we've got some things that we're already thinking about that we're going to change for our projection process for next year, how we're going to try to get better again next year, and we'll see how that works. Hopefully that does work, and maybe next year it's convincing enough that we could say that, you know what, we're actually pretty convinced that we can be number one, number two year after year after year at this point. Based on the numbers that I see here, I think it is valid to, do some sort of composite. If you want to, do some weighting across and whoever your favorite analysts are, I think that's totally valid, especially given these numbers and how tight these numbers are. The one thing that I think that we provide along with our projections that we hope kind of sets us apart is that we're really providing you all the reasoning. We're providing you the time on ice that we're projecting, whether we're projecting them for power play time there, we're kind of giving you the behind the scenes on how we build our projections. And so then you as the listener kind of have that extra degree of insight, I guess,
Yeah,
that you can
buy-in as
apply.
well, right?
Right. To figure out if you agree with what we're projecting on that level, and then you can kind of, when you're going to draft that player, you think, wow, this player's ranked really high but by Nate, but I know I've heard him talk about, this is why he's really high on him. He thinks he's going to get like 3 minutes more ice time than I think he's going to get, and so I have to kind of discount that for myself if I'm using Nate's projections. So yeah, I think that's kind of the edge, I guess, that we can provide in our projections is that we are giving you that kind of insight. And when we do the team by team projection review at the beginning of every year, we do go into that kind of detail on pretty much every player. So we really are giving you that level of insight. And so hopefully that's kind of giving you the leg up even beyond how good the projections are. We think the projections obviously stand up to everybody else in the industry here after kind of doing this review for ourselves. Blake, I've talked a lot here. I want to hand off to you. Anything you want to say about the goals, assist points, or the methodology here?
Yeah, I don't have too much to add. I think you covered most of it there, but I mean, these were available for free. Our projections were available for free, folks. Okay. I mean, I'm just saying, like, we're in the wheelhouse. Like, you see how tight that is, right? And um, I'm just, every time we do this episode, I always get so jacked up to start projections again, because that's something like I just really enjoy and tinkering and stuff like that. And I feel like, yeah. Every time I do this episode as well, I learn something. Like, just, for instance, my goals being fourth, right, out of five. Like, I'm gonna have to look at that, right, and that again, just some accountability here. I'm gonna have to look at my methodology and potentially make some changes. So I think it's a really good showing, though. Like you said, super tight between all five analysts, and I'm happy to be here.
All right. So yeah, I'll run through the rest of it too, just for people's kind of general information here. Power play points. Dauber didn't do power play points, so it's only amongst the four of us there. Dom Lucian number one here, 35.1%. I was number two, 35.8%. Laidlaw number three, 36.1%, and Blake number four, 37.4%. Obviously, there's more variation here. Power play points are harder to project than overall points, and that's why you're seeing a higher percentage there in terms of the error, and why there's more of a spread as well from top to bottom in the between the four of us there. In shots, Dauber was number one in shots, 15.6%. Kind of accurately predicted this downturn in shooting this year, which is pretty impressive stuff. Dom Lucian was number two, 17.0. Laidlaw number three, 17.6. I was number four, 18.1. And Blake number five, 18.6. In hits, I was number one there, 25.4%. Dauber number two, 26.7%. Blake number three, 27.3%. Laidlaw number four, 28.5%. And Lucian number five, 29.2% there. In blocks, Lucian number one, 15.9%. Blake number two, 18.0%. Laidlaw number three, 18.2%. I was number four, 18.5%, and Dauber number five, 19.0%. Penalty minutes, Steve Laidlaw didn't do this, so it's between four of us there as well. Lucian number one, 30% error there, so again, penalty minutes, a bit more of an error on this one across all the analysts. Dauber number 2, 30.4%. I was number 3, 32%. Blake number 4, 32.4%. So yeah, I don't have too much to add there. It is in some ways harder, in some ways easier to do peripheral stats. I think there's definitely something like, for example, the way that Lucian does blocks. Like he was significantly better at blocks than the rest of us, so that's kind of interesting. I'd be interested to see why that might be. I haven't heard him talk about on any podcast or anything that I've seen him write about why that might be. Like if there's something he's looking at specifically there that we're not capturing, but definitely he's got an edge there. So that's an interesting one to look at and one that we'll be looking at for sure to try to close the gap there. Um, but yeah, I think across the board, you just want to be in the ballpark with these kind of things. You want to be relatively tight and not get, totally sewered by projecting somebody for 150 hits and they wind up with 50 hits, right? Like,
Right.
to some extent, the returns are less on the peripheral stats, right? Most of your weighting in your points leagues or most of your categories are typically in the point scoring categories. So that is where Blake and I focus most of our time, but we are still obviously trying to provide you a fully fleshed projection here with the other stuff as well. Anything to add there, Blake?
Yeah, I mean, just before we move on, like you're being modest, my man. You smashed this year. Like you had a great year in terms of your projections, and I'm just curious, like because I remember last year's episode, you were a little bit disappointed. Like it was still a great performance, but you weren't as happy with what you did. And I'm wondering, what did you change? Like, is put you on the spot here. Like, can you think of what it is that you changed or what you learned maybe from last year that you applied to your projections this year that gave you this kind of result?
Yeah, I think there was a little bit to it. I think I went deeper in on um, just the team situations, buying in a little bit more on different teams, like the Columbus situation. If you heard our preseason talk, we were uh, even with the Johnny Gaudreau tragedy, we're still a little bit more bullish on Columbus doing a little bit better across the board. Just because of the Dean Evison coming to town and Pascal Vincent leaving. So I think there were just some situations like that. I think we projected a team like Anaheim correctly, where we looked at what Greg Cronin did and we said, this is awful. This is not going to work again. And so where it would have been really easy to like get very excited about Leo Carlson or Trevor Zegras or some of these other players that and again, I don't know exactly what, these other three analysts that we've got here specifically said about Anaheim. It's just an example that I'm pulling up from memory. We kind of tamped down our expectations on that pretty accurately, I think. So I think, if anything, my biggest improvement was being a little bit more directionally accurate on the team level stuff and having how that cascaded down to the individual players. I think I've got some more thoughts for the upcoming year. Patrons have already heard me talk about this, but the way that shooting has been trending, shooting percentages going up, shots on goal going down, and really continuing that trend in a major way this past year, even more so than previous years. I think that that's going to be a really big factor for me this upcoming season. And I actually do think that that should make a pretty significant difference in my ability to project both shots and goals. And so, yeah, coming out first in goals this year and still feeling like I left meat on the bone there this year, I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, buddy, that's awesome. I think for me personally, like I was really big into micro stats and things like that, and it was kind of a rabbit hole that was different than what we were doing at that point. And I felt like, yeah, I wanted to use that new knowledge in my projections, but it's like I'm still only at the tip of the iceberg with that stuff. You know what I mean? So I feel like, yeah, maybe I leaned one way or the other too much in certain areas where I thought it was going to be successful, like just based on some of those statistics. But throughout the year, I feel like, yeah, like you said, I've got some things that I can shore up and just be, what is that you said, directionally, like
Directionally accurate. Yeah.
yeah, I think I'll use that as well. And I don't know, I feel like I've honed it down a little bit more, so I'm excited to kind of to get into this process again next year.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wouldn't tell you to discount any of that stuff that you're talking about either. Like we saw how players like Hegel, players like Natchez that you were excited about for those reasons and the way that they came through this year. I think that you're onto something there. But yeah, there might be some level of
Yeah, I gotta
balance to
hone it
strike
down.
there, just because all these different players have that. It may be, it may be more of a ceiling case than a median case as well, right? Where if everything works out well, then now what you're seeing based on those microstats is that this player could have a really high ceiling and that could hit in a big way, the way that it did for Hagel and for Natchez. But does that mean that you increase the median projection on every single player that has a good underlying microstat profile?
Right.
Maybe not, especially if the team situation kind of goes counter to that in some ways. So I think there's definitely some stuff to take away there as well. All right. Let's continue on. So, what we're going to do now is talk about kind of our biggest misses and our biggest hits. We're only going to limit this to goals and points for ourselves here, but I do think that this is just kind of an easy in to talk about some of the more surprising players in some regards, but also players that we were kind of right about as well. So, we'll dig in here for myself. Three players. These aren't like the three biggest misses, like statistically the biggest misses that I had in goals, but they are the three that I think had like a significant impact for fantasy. So I wanted to talk about them for that reason. But also have, interesting storylines and something that we could actually probably learn from for next year. And so the three that I picked out for myself in terms of biggest misses on the goals front: Connor Bedard, Pavel Dorofiev, and Jared McCann. Bedard, I want to dig into a little bit and maybe talk to you about a little bit, Blake, but Dorofiev and McCann a little more quickly here. Um, let's start with Dorofiev. I think that, I actually went back and listened to the episode about Vegas that we did, and I did specifically shout out Dorofiev, and I said, like, I do actually really like this guy's underlying numbers. I think that he's both a big time generator and he's quite efficient. And so if we were specifically talking about the power play, if he could sneak into the power play role, sneak into the top six, then
Mhm.
I would actually be very in on the player, and that's exactly what happened this year. So I think I had the idea that this could happen, but in my projections, I was pretty convinced that he was still like just going to be relegated to a bottom six role, and that Bruce Cassidy wasn't never going to trust him, that he was going to get Daniel Sprongified, for lack of a better term. And so that's what I
I don't
think
like
kind of
this.
that's what I think
Yeah.
kind of held me back on Dorothy there. Uh, but definitely it's a player that we had some respect for the ceiling that he could potentially bring based on the underlying numbers. Jared McCann, I think this one is pretty instructive for myself, where I was really high on Jared McCann with a new coach coming to town, just based on sheer ice time, where Jeremy McCann had been getting like these 16 to 17-minute range ice times over the past few years previously, and now we have a new coach in town. What if he gives him 18 plus, 19 plus, dare I say 20 plus? What could the ceiling be for someone as efficient as Jared McCann? And what I think I lost in translation there a little bit was, yes, the ice time was down for Jared McCann, but actually it probably was a pretty good style of play, a pretty good situation for Jared McCann overall to be an efficient player. And so this year, I think he actually lost some of the efficiency, and then in the end, he didn't really gain anything in ice time either. So
Yep.
while I don't think it was necessarily wrong to hope or even necessarily project that Jerry McCann could take a bit more ice time as probably the best forward on the team, definitely the best goal scorer on the team, I don't think that was necessarily wrong to hope for or project, given the myth of rational coaching in the NHL. I might just do it all again next year. But what I think I may have missed is that the actual situation and some of McCann's efficiency was actually tied to the system that he's in before, and that might actually go down with a new coach, whereas kind of carrying over the efficiency from the previous season and just pasting it onto some extra minutes and then saying, wow, look at this high projection. So I think that's the takeaway for me on McCann. For Bedard, I think this is a much more difficult case to really tease apart. I had some hope that Bertuzzi would be good enough to be an even strength line mate for Bedard, that would be a bit of a difference maker for him over the previous year, and that we could continue to see Bedard take another step. I had some hope that Teuvo Teravainen would be enough on the power play as, a power play specialist kind of player to elevate Bedard on the power play, and that would also kind of elevate him in a bit of a second year leap from what he provided in his rookie season. Instead, what we get is kind of the ceiling falling in, and Connor Bedard unable to elevate the team on his own. And so there's a few things that I'm still kind of tossing around about this one, and that's why I wanted to kind of get your 2 cents as well, Blake, is I think that, again, it was a bit of a unique situation in how bad the Blackhawks were. You can attribute that to a lot of things, coaching maybe one of them. Maybe that's solidified next year, maybe it's not, and maybe that's something we don't have to worry about so much for next year. But also just the profile of Bedard as a player and his ability to individually raise the level of play of all of the players around him, and that was something that I had a lot more faith in than I guess was truly warranted, as evidenced by the results this year. And I'm still like not sure what exactly to do with that. Obviously, everybody knows the Bedard prospect profile and how much love he got as a prospect, how great the rookie season was. It appeared to be all wheels up for him going into the season, and then this season happens, and now we're wondering a little bit what that means. Is there something about Bedard's profile that I missed that suggested that this was a very real outcome and I should have been picking up on it? That's some more work that I'm still hoping to dig into a little bit more this off season, and see if there might be some parallel there that then I should be applying to, maybe some of the same warning signs are there for Macklin Celebrini, for example, for next year, and I should be more cognizant of some potential downside risk. I think Celebrini's situation around him is a lot better than Bedard's has been at any point in his young career so far. But at the same time, I don't want to just discount that and say, if there are some of the same warning signs that we saw kind of fall apart for Bedard in this sophomore season, is there anything there that I should be tiding over to my projection for a player like Celebrini, but not just Celebrini, maybe a Michkov in Philadelphia, or, go down the list. But what should I be thinking about, especially with these young players who look like they have such high ceilings immediately upon arrival in the NHL? So any thoughts on Bedard and just kind of the archetype of player here? Is this something that we probably could have seen coming a little bit more than we did?
I think that we had a little bit of wishful thinking in terms of the players they brought in to play with Bedard. And when I look at his season as a whole, I feel like he is that player that we thought he is. It's just he had no help. He really had no help for the second straight year. And he needs someone on his line to win some puck battles for him, right? And also, like, I'm just digging in on some of the lines that he played with this year, and there's not just two guys that he was consistently playing with all year. Like, I'm on Dauber Frozen Tools right now. His highest line that he played the most minutes with, Ryan Donato, Ilya Mikheyev, okay, which is whatever. The next, that's at 109 minutes. Then at 92 minutes, it's Bertuzzi and Frank Nazar. Then at 91 minutes, it's Taylor Hall and Tyler Bertuzzi. Like, he was getting bumped around. Like, there's no consistency with his line mates.
Yeah.
Right. And I just think as a young player, you could see the frustration that was building with Bedard there. And I mean, in his first year, and I know I'm not tooting this guy's horn, but Philip Kurashev, right? He played almost a full season with Philip Kurashev. And when I look at kind of his microstat profile with, Corey Schneider's project, in his first year, he was getting a ton of high danger passes to his stick, right? And I feel like it was Philip Kurashev who's one of the people driving that. Whereas this last season, Bedard became more the facilitator as opposed to the guy at the end of passes, right? And I just think, the player itself, he's still that play driving guy. He's still the guy bringing the puck into the zone, driving offense for his line. But if he's required to do every single thing, it's just not going to turn out well, right? And I think that was the case here. And yeah, just so many different line mates. At least he was able to cook on the power play. Like, this guy's going to be a great power play performer. 29 power play points for Bedard this past season. I mean, it's all right there. I think Bedard's going to be a major value in drafts this upcoming year, especially, like, we got to find out who the coach is going to be, right? And also, who are they going to sign? they got to get someone in here to play with Bedard. They have to, and who they're committed to keeping on his line so they can build some chemistry. But yeah, I don't think you got it wrong. I really don't. I feel like we know who this player is. It's just he really had no help, and it was kind of a toxic environment there. Not so much in the dressing room or anything, but just a toxic offensive environment that really wasn't conducive to production for Bedard. So that's my 2 cents there. I feel like he's going to really bounce back next year.
All right. Let's continue on. Let's talk about your biggest misses in the goals department, Blake. So the 3 that I grabbed for you: Alex Ovechkin, Elias Pettersson, and Matthew Knies. Take it away. What do you got?
Oh God. Well, I'm happy. I'm happy to talk about Alex Ovechkin. That's going to be a fun conversation. Because I still feel pretty good about what I was able to do, and I still believe in all the things I said about Alex Ovechkin. But I mean, there were some things that happened this season that really vaulted him up, and some things that I sort of didn't really account for. But I'm going to talk about him. I want to talk about Elias Pettersson really quick here. I mean, that I've talked about him a little bit on pods here and there, but obviously this is a player that's having such a strange decline. I mean, it's such a decline that it's really hard to predict. So it's not a surprise to me that he's on this list. Like, this is a guy that has an elite level shot, a slapper, a snapper, a wrist shot. This guy shoots the puck as good as anybody in the league, right? The problem is he's not doing it. Right. Like he's just not shooting. Right. Like, obviously his numbers went way down in terms of shot metrics. And this has been, well documented by Vancouver media and everybody else. And some other stuff came out about Pettersson as well. Just like he kind of showed up to camp, maybe not in the best shape and was sort of relying more on his talent than hard work. And I think that's been brought to his attention. And hopefully this offseason we see a different player here, because he was battling a little bit of an injury and maybe that was a factor. But I don't know. This guy's truly, he's a coin flip to me at this point, right? Like, his contract's up, or he starts his new contract, $11 million contract, July 1st. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I would imagine if he is with the team on July 1st, he'll bounce back from this 45-point season in 64 games. My God, that's depressing to even read. But yeah, I think one thing I liked about Pettersson, now I'm yammering on Pettersson, but he's been very consistent with his metrics. So I felt good about, sort of projecting him in that vein, and, things fell off even more, right? Like the shots, I really didn't see the shots going down to the level that they were. The power play production was putrid, right? He even lost some power play percentage, like share. He went from 72% last year to 66 this year. It was just a trash season. So I'm kind of throwing it out a little bit, but anyways, that makes sense why he would be on this list. Matthew Knies is an interesting one. Like, what did he end up with, for God's sake? 29 goals. My God. Yeah, I really didn't see that coming, because of kind of proof of concept, what we saw already with Matthew Knies, and anybody who isn't like that, those top 4 players in the top 6 there for Toronto is like they're spare parts. Well, Knies really separated himself this year, right? Like, which is, good for him. Like, he's an amazing net front player. That's what he does. He's really good at that. He's good at board battles. But one of the things that was interesting to me is I feel like his increase in production, goal production, came at the expense of Matthews' goal production. I feel like, like Matthew Knies was at the end of passes as opposed to Matthews sometimes, right? And I felt like Marner and Matthews were kind of zipping around all the time, and Knies was just getting set up in the zone and putting the biscuit in the basket. So, I didn't see that coming. I thought it would continue with old faithful, like, Marner and Matthews getting to biz, and it might, Matthews might be injured as well, right? Which is, I think pretty well documented as well. He might be battling something for the last little bit here, but yeah, I just didn't see that coming. So, and now we know, like, this, I think Knies is a player that kind of stands on his own merit at this point. And I'm interested to see what he does next year. But Alex Ovechkin, oh God. Yeah, I was infamously out on Alex Ovechkin at the beginning of the year, and kind of bit me in the butt, and I'm happy for it, honestly. I really don't feel like I said anything that was too crazy. Like, all the things that I was kind of hanging my hat on in terms of Alex Ovechkin was he's slow, right? He's absolutely slow. That's true. He doesn't play defense, right? That's true. He doesn't forecheck. That's true. right? He just lumbers his great silver fox into the zone and sets up for shots. But this guy's incredible. He broke his leg in the season
Yeah.
and came back and just like what a unit. I mean, it's a great story, but I think 9 times out of 10, my projection was correct, and he doesn't do this. That's my thought. Like he was down a minute and a half ice time as well, which like something I was saying in the preseason. This is a guy that they don't even trust him out on the ice in overtime 3-on-3. He's been getting like limited minutes here in the playoffs as well. Like that means something, like he played 14 minutes the other night, like against Carolina. 14 minutes. This is your guy, right? So he played 13 against Montreal in one game. So he's kind of a specialist at this point. But the problem is he's the best specialist that ever existed. I mean, geez. And I also didn't take into account how much the team would be rallying around that goal record. I just didn't see that coming, right? But the amount of empty net goals that he got this year, that played a big factor into it, right? But I don't even want to like diminish the man's accomplishment. Like he was blasting 1-Ts all over the place. He looked great. It was exciting, and I'm happy for it. But I think now that this record is done, I really feel like I don't have much hope for any kind of offensive production for Ovechkin next year. I'm thinking like 50 to 60 point Ovechkin is probably like absolute max. That's my take there. But I don't know what you think about Ovechkin, Nate.
Yeah, I share some of the same sentiments for sure. The ice time ticked down a big way this year, dropped a minute and a half from last year, all the way down to 17:43 average time on ice this year. Made up for that with just some outrageous efficiency, 15.4% on ice shooting percentage. His highest in any season before that point was 13.6, so massive increase there. 18.6% individual shooting percentage, over 3% more than his previous season long best. So, yeah, some really insane efficiency on that front. I think that Washington as a whole really outperformed in terms of their individual efficiency. For sure, things came together, and that, like, I don't think that their production was like necessarily fake. But I do think that it's unlikely to sustain at that high of a rate next year. I think you even saw towards the back end of the year, I think some of that started to go away a little bit. I think teams started to get a bit more of a book on the Capitals, and I think you're seeing it in the playoffs a little bit from time to time with the Carolina Hurricanes, that they are able to limit some of that. So as some of the better teams kind of put out a blueprint on how to stop what the Capitals put together this year, I think that you could see a pretty natural regression next year. And yeah, if the ice time continues to trend downward for Ovechkin, that's going to be a really significant factor as well. I will note, like, he did legitimately increase his scoring chances and shot production over last year in lesser minutes, but the rate increased. So I don't want to take that away from him either. I do think like the power play was much better this year. You know, different players being on it, Tom Wilson being healthy, all these things did contribute to an uptick for Ovechkin this year. And a lot of those things will still be true again next year. But I think it would be pretty foolish to bet on this kind of magical storybook season to repeat itself next year again. So yeah, I think there was maybe some factors that we could have seen coming and being a little bit more kind to Ovechkin perhaps in our projections, but definitely I think if anyone told you they saw this season coming for him at this age, then they're lying to you. All right, biggest misses in points for myself. I think Lane Hudson, Martin H's, Timo Meyer kind of take the cake as the at least the most interesting ones to talk about that were high on my list. Martin H's, I've mentioned this before, but this is a player that you were definitely in on, and I wasn't really seeing it. I was starting to feel like Rod the Bod was out on Martin H's. You didn't really feel that way, and you were right. And he absolutely crushed, especially at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
So that's one for myself that, yeah, I think I could have maybe taken a bit less of a um, tried to rid myself of a little bit of that recency bias where what I had just seen from Natchez immediately was that he was getting demoted. You know, there's the off-season stuff about the contract and all this going on. And I could have taken a bit more of a middle road approach where, either he could, this could continue to sour and go downhill, or he could, yeah, kind of use this as rocket fuel, which is obviously what he did for the year. And so I could have taken a bit more of a middle approach there and not been just so bearish, basically, which is where I ended up on Natchez going into the season, and that would have at least helped. I don't think I could have projected the season that he did. I don't think you did either, Blake, but you were definitely much, much more optimistic. And so that was a miss for me there. Timo Meyer, the other one, honestly, I still kind of just believe that this comes down to Sheldon Keefe deciding that for whatever reason he really had to have Dawson Meyer or Stefan Nason or Andre Palat or any number of other names on the top power play unit instead of Timo Meyer. Make it make sense. I still can't. But I really do think that with that deployment on power play one, that Timo Meyer would have been much closer to my projections. I'm actually curious now. I didn't actually look up what Meyer finished with. I know he ended the season with a little bit more power play time just due to the Hughes injury and stuff like that. I think maybe there is some kind of overlapping skill set there with Jack Hughes, where both of them are kind of natural shooters on a power play, and so perhaps there was some factor there to Sheldon Keefe's thinking. But I've also seen Sheldon Keefe do this with William Nylander, who's
Right.
it just took Keefe forever to realize that Nylander just is that guy, and he absolutely has to be on a top power play unit. And so I kind of think that that's a possibility there as well. Yeah, just 13 power play points this year for Timo Meyer. Absolutely unconscionable to be using your $9 million this way in my mind. So, yeah, I don't really have a lot of confidence that's going to change next
Such a good
year.
word.
Yeah, unconscionable.
How
Act
dare you, Sheldon Keefe?
A word used to describe much of Sheldon Keefe's actions as
There you
coach
go.
of the Toronto Maple Leafs too. So, anyway, Timo Meyer, yeah, I guess maybe I bought into the myth of rational coaching a bit too much with Timo Meyer, and so I was pretty confident in that top power play deployment. But again, given the same set of circumstances for a player with a different name, I don't really know that I would do anything different. Like, logic typically dictates that your $9 million players are going to play on power play one, and that didn't happen here. And I don't really want to, in this particular case, I think it's a little bit more about the individual coach. Maybe I could have seen that coming with Keefe individually, that was at least a possibility. But I almost don't want to assign this one too much weight. I think it might just be the result of a single coaching decision that I don't want to, try to read across too much and assign that kind of value system to another coach in a different situation with a different player, and then kind of make the mistake in the opposite direction somewhere else. So, yeah, I'm basically trying not to learn a lesson in this particular instance, I think. Lane Hudson, though, I think this is a really interesting one. I actually had a pretty big projection on Mike Matheson because I kind of thought that um, it would just be a situation where Montreal would kind of play out the string again this year. Didn't really see this roster making the playoffs at the beginning of the year. And so I thought they'd kind of let Lane Hudson kind of ripen throughout the season and let Mike Matheson eat all the big minutes, including the power play, until, maybe halfway through the year or the back half of the year somewhere, Lane Hudson gets the power play time when the games don't mean anything. Montreal's not in a playoff spot. Instead, Lane Hudson, is elite basically from the word go. Martin St. Louis absolutely believes in him as, one of these undersized players, as St. Louis was himself in the NHL. And Hudson absolutely shines, at least in an offensive role for the entirety of the season, and kind of grabs the power play one role and never gives it back. And they end up just using Matheson basically as their only NHL caliber defenseman to play against
Right.
top forwards on other teams, and basically only use them for that purpose. So, yeah, I think that's an interesting talking point. And what I'm personally taking away from that is I I think that Lane Hudson was predictably this good. Like, his his metrics, if you look at his hockey prospecting model, all of these kinds of things are pointing you to believe in Lane Hudson. And I think I almost kind of bought into the but he's small
Mm,
counter narrative, which I just feel like is a tired narrative that I should be better than
mm.
going with that kind of really base and boring narrative. So yeah, I think just believe in talent is kind of the takeaway that I want to have for myself here, even if it is an undersized rookie defenseman. And maybe there is some element to Martin St. Louis as coach that I could have evaluated as well, where it's like, yeah, this guy was that undersized guy. He gave Cole Caulfield big minutes immediately on his arrival as well. He wasn't a guy who really slow played any of his young players, but really put them in positions to get their feet wet immediately. And I probably could have seen a little bit more of that for Lane Hudson's future as well. What do you think about the Hudson Matheson situation, how that played out this year, Blake?
Yeah, I mean, it hit me too, right? Like I think I was a little like a touch higher on Hudson than you were, but I was really high on Matheson. I thought it was going to be one more year with Mike Matheson doing his thing, and they. I think we had that conversation in the projection shows. Like, yeah, when Montreal's out of the playoffs, like, yeah, then just give all the minutes to Hudson, and maybe he'll kind of beef up his season. Well, that just wasn't the case, and I like what you said about trusting talent, and I think that's a really key piece because. I just think the way that NHL is now, it's the talent is insane, and yeah, these coaches are letting out the leash. And yeah, I was as surprised as you when Hudson was getting these big minutes because I thought there would be some defensive liabilities there. But yeah, it burned me too, and I feel like I don't know 60-point Hudson moving forward that might be something we can expect.
Yeah. Let's continue on. We're going to get long in tooth on this one. Blake, your biggest misses in points as selected by me for you. Matt Duchene, Zach Hyman, Miro Heiskanen. Take it away.
Just straight bait. Was that Duchesne again? God, Duchesne tooting right in my face as he does. All right. But this is my last season, pretending that Matt Duchesne isn't good because the guy's insane. He's really good. I think my thought there, like Duchesne got 82 points this year. What the hell? I had him projected for like 53. Okay. So that's a big miss, right? But I think I bought into the narrative, and this is something I'm going to be taking moving forward is like, it just because you have a top line doesn't mean they're going to get all the minutes, right? And I should have known a little bit better in Dallas there because they've done it before, right? The line with Duchesne, Sagan, and whoever else they put on that line, Marchment, like that's a legitimate line, and they get the biz. And I think Dallas changed their style a little bit this year. They became more of a rush offense team, whereas they used to be a little bit more balanced. Like even as recently as last year, they were a little bit more balanced. And their defense was a little bit better. Well, this year they went big time on the rush plays, and then their rush defense was a little bit worse, right? Because they were getting lots of chances, but they were giving up chances. And Matt Duchene thrives in that environment, and he absolutely did here. Like Dallas came out of the gate offensively a little bit limp, and it was the Duchesne line that was really kind of carrying play. And he had a great first half, just really consistent throughout the whole season. I mean, I'm looking at this now, 26 points in his first 21 games, buddy. What are you doing? And that's really impressive. So Duchesne's 34, so we'll see what happens. I'm surprised he only signed the 1-year deal there in Dallas. We'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Like this guy fits this. He can play up and down the lineup here. He can play power play one, or now that they have Rantanen, like it's a little bit interesting what Duchesne is getting there, because in the playoffs here he's only got 5 points in 11 games, and they're all assists, right? So it's a little bit different now with Rantanen in there in Dallas. So I wouldn't be too surprised if Duchesne goes elsewhere in the offseason. And that could be, that's going to be hard to predict, right? Because I think this is a player that needs a certain type of offensive system to really thrive. So anyways, he crushed me again. This guy is elite in a lot of metrics in terms of offensive generation. That's for damn sure, even at a ripe old age of 34. So shout out to Matt Duchesne. I really biffed it on that one. Zach Hyman, 44 points in 73 games. That's a 49-point pace for Hyman. I think a lot of people were probably in the same boat as me. There should be a floor there with Zach Hyman because of his inclusion on the top power play. This case, like he only got 6 power play goals this year after scoring 15 power play goals last year. That's massive. Like that's ridiculous. So I don't know. I'd have to dig in on the Oilers power play a little bit and see what changes were made. But I also think that Hyman was just really inefficient throughout the year. I think there were some confidence issues at some point because he started out so bad, like 8 points in the first 20 games. I mean, we talked about it lots. Like this is a guy that's shooting the lights out. He's lots of shots and really good at individual scoring chances but he wasn't converting and nothing really ever took off for him. So I do think that this is a player that's going to be valuable next year, but we won't have to spend a third round draft pick to get him. I think we'll be able to get Hyman at a lot less. And, I also think we should temper expectations. Like in Edmonton's big season, this guy got 83 points in 79 games. Their season last year, he got 77 points. He did get 54 goals, but that was on massive efficiency. And now he got 44 points this last year. So I think this is a player that's probably closer to 60 to 70 points probably perennially. And I feel good about that. I mean, we'll see the numbers come out, but yeah, Zach Hyman, what are you doing? Hurt my feelings. Lastly, Miro the Hero Heiskanen in that cold cut combo. I've been, much more into this player than you are. And I think what it is like, I have to start separating fantasy from reality. And I think maybe I was kind of valuing this guy as high as I do in real life as I do in fantasy. And I just don't think he's that type of player. The year he got 73 points, that is clearly the outlier, right? And now that you have a player like Thomas Harley who comes in here, I mean, I'll back up here. When Heiskanen got injured, they throw the power play was terrible. They throw Thomas Harley on power play 1, and then the power play starts going nuclear, right? That's not a coincidence. I think that he's a better fit on that top power play. I think that Thomas Harley is potentially a better rushing defenseman than Miro Heiskanen. And Miro Heiskanen could just be that stud, like that horse defensive defenseman that's good for 40 to 50 points a year. And I think that might be where he lives moving forward. And so I think I got that wrong. And I think I was just valuing the top forwards and top players on Dallas a little higher than I should have, because it was the secondary scoring that really carried him through the first half. So I don't know. What do you got to say about my misses here, Nate?
Yeah, I think the Heiskanen Harley scenario is actually pretty interesting moving forward. I mean, for last year, like it was a big miss for me too in terms of the point pace for Heiskanen. I think he was a bit unlucky, like 36% IPP is pretty low. The on ice stuff, like he played all of his time before injury in that early part of the season where, Jason Robertson wasn't scoring either. Like it wasn't just him at that point. So, he also didn't play well, but also the team wasn't playing as well as it did later on in the season. So he kind of got a double whammy effect there. So I think Heiskanen is better than what he did last year, but I do agree that there is this potential now that Thomas Harley has just completely usurped him as the top offensive defenseman on the team and therefore the top fantasy option on the team. And so that is going to be pretty interesting. I'm kind of hoping that we get some idea from Dallas in these playoffs with Heiskanen coming back actually in this game tonight as we're recording here on Tuesday the 13th, that we get some sort of indication of what they'd like to do there. That will depend. Like I want to see how Heiskanen looks, like if he looks completely healthy now or if he is kind of rushing back to be here in the playoffs. That will probably matter too. If Harley's getting all the power play one time, but Heiskanen looks like he's still clearly kind of injured and just playing through something, then that's not the same as if Heiskanen comes back and looks fully unencumbered, but he's not on the top power play. So that's something that I'm really looking for in these playoffs, is to see if we get any idea of preference in terms of that, or like Dallas has still kind of split some power play units fairly evenly here. Does this just become a 1A 1B situation? Think Vince Dunn, Brandon Montour in Seattle, things like that. That's also a very real outcome for me, potentially moving forward as well. So definitely stuff to think about there. Let's keep moving. Talk about our biggest hits. In terms of goals, the ones that I thought were kind of the most interesting here: Leo Carlsson, Anze Kopitar, Wyatt Johnston. Leo Carlsson, I got pretty close, but it was actually just kind of because he was super efficient, 17.5% shooting percentage on the season. To some extent, I I still feel like I was, I'm gonna use the term directionally accurate on this, where I thought that Carlson would take a step. He just took a step in a different kind of area of the game in terms of the shooting efficiency than the overall shot generation. I still have some love for Leo Carlson. I mentioned, I think, in an earlier podcast at one point, like, I'm not sure if Carlson, if there's anybody even on Anaheim who can take a next step to like an elite 1C level and be like that franchise center for them moving forward. I know that's what they hope for Leo Carlson for, the next decade, is that he is a franchise 1C and he can do all of that. I don't know that we've quite seen that level, but I also don't know that it's possible to see that level under as bad of coaching as we saw from Greg Cronin the last couple of years there in Anaheim. And so this year, I think is going to be very instructive for Leo Carlson to see what this guy's truly made of. And I am going to have to think long and hard about what kind of projection I put on him, because I feel like he could embarrass me with a really big season if I don't respect him. Anze Kopitar, I think this is one where we did kind of see some regression coming again, where he just like will not shoot the puck, but also that he would be efficient. So I think just kind of pretty accurate on the assessment of what Kings were going to do there, and but still that Kopitar would be efficient with those touches, that he would still be on the top power play and get those prime looks as well. Wyatt Johnston is the one that I think is kind of the most interesting overall. Plays all 82 games, 33 goals, 71 points. Big season for Wyatt Johnston. And this is a player that a lot of people were really, really hyped on at the beginning of the season. I was hyped on him too, but I had him for 33 goals, so I pretty much nailed that. 33.3 goals in the projections, 76.3 points is what I had him for, and that's pretty much what he came out to. And there were other people who were thinking that he could do much more than that. And I think this was just, again, I talked about team situations. I think this was a team situation that I actually did read fairly well in Dallas, that Wyatt Johnston was going to get bumped around the lineup a little bit. He wasn't just going to be, it wasn't just going to be Hintz, Robertson, Johnson, line one, power play one, all the minutes, all the time, all year long, that they were going to kind of use this top nine to the fullest effect all year long. And that would kind of artificially hold down Johnston's true ceiling potential. And so I think that's just something that I want to kind of track for myself moving forward, is some of these teams, you do kind of have to evaluate how they like to deploy their forwards and how much that really does affect their potential to, in this case, score goals. Thoughts on Johnston there, Blake?
Yeah, I mean, just you and I were talking a little bit offline, but it's just a player I'm pretty excited about. Yeah, Dallas in general was a team that I feel like I didn't quite get correct in terms of their deployment, and Wyatt Johnston in particular. I guess I sort of believed that he would be getting that kind of top line treatment, top power play all year, and it wasn't not that, but yeah, it wasn't as much as I thought. But yeah, we were talking offline that just hearing Pete DeBoer, his head coach, talk about Wyatt Johnston being the captain of the Dallas Stars one day, like that is a glowing endorsement, and just kind of tells you what kind of player this kid is. He's young, he's only 21, and his coach is already saying he's going to be the captain of the team at some point. That's exciting. That gives me a lot of hope for Wyatt Johnston moving forward and what his production is going to bring.
Absolutely. Let's move over to your biggest hits in the goals department, Blake. Vincent Trocheck, Dylan Strome, Sam Reinhart are the three players that I've selected for you. Take it away.
How epic is this? Vinny Tro and the Sex Panther. I nailed it. Snailed it. And it feels good. And throw Dylan Strome in there for good measure. We like that. Honestly, Vincent Trocheck, I can't. This is just one of those ones I didn't have a ton of thought on. Like I wasn't like digging in so deep on Vinny Tro. I thought his role was really solid with the team. Obviously, the Rangers were amazing last year, and they sort of fell off big time this last season, especially defensively. Oh my God, they were horrible in transition. Like they just couldn't reset, and they were hemorrhaging chances and goals. So, anyways, that's neither here nor there. But yeah, Trocheck, again, I thought his role was really solid. 59 points in 82 games. This guy's a beast. Through one game missed in the last 4 seasons. What a legend! Oh my God. But yeah, I think we know what Trocheck is. And the interesting thing with his goals is like he lost 6 goals on the power play, and he was still able to kind of meet this quota here. And yeah, it's just a player that I think is kind of a meat and potatoes kind of guy. It's going to be a little bit different moving forward if he's not on power play one. I think we're going to have to act accordingly, but he's a great defensive player. And they have good players on that team now, but you've got JT Miller in town. I think that's going to hamper Trocheck's production moving forward for sure. So I feel like, yeah, it's not luck. I mean, I dug in, but it's not a player that I had a huge take on. So anyways, that's nice. But Sam Reinhart, oh, I feel good about that because, yeah, this guy's coming off a 57 goal season, right? That's incredible. But we all knew, like, he shot 24.5%. That didn't make any sense. But one thing that's really neat about Reinhardt, and I think you and I both sort of saw coming, is like his role on the team has been secured, right? His role in that power play, how they utilize that power play. Like 2 years ago, where Reinhardt got 67 points, and guys like Brandon Montour were popping the hell off. They were going from low to high for the power play. So it was a lot of shots from Ekblad, a lot of shots from Montour. They were sort of, crashing the net and doing things that way. Well, in 23-24, they changed it and they started overloading one side with Barkov, Tkachuk, and Reinhardt. And he just went off, like 27 power play goals in that year. So we all knew that wasn't going to happen, but how far was it going to fall off? And I feel pretty good. Like, actually, I'm looking at his actual projection too. I think I nailed it. I had him for 85 points. He was pacing for 84, 39 goals he got. Yeah, this is kind of what I think we should expect from Sam Reinhart. An amazing, if not one of the best, if not the best two-way players out there, right? I mean, Alexander Barkov might have something to say about that, but yeah, they're doing a lot of good things there. I feel like there's still a little bit more juice, or maybe, like you say, a little bit more meat on the bone in terms of power play goals. So I think we could see like a perennial 40 goal scorer here in Sam Reinhart, but I think what we saw this year is probably close to what he's going to be moving forward, and I feel good about that. And then Dylan Strome, I mean, geez, 82 points in 82 games. It's hard to, I didn't project the points there, that's for sure. But I'll take the goals. That feels good. I think with Washington, when I was talking about Ovi there, one thing I neglected to mention is Lexi Protas and what a big piece he was. And also PLD and Connor McMichael forming a true second line there. I think it made a lot of, it just opened up a lot of space for a guy like Dylan Strome, who's a great facilitator. He's got one of the best goal scorers. Actually, he's got the best goal scorer in the entire league on his line, right? And then Protas kind of adding a different element, a rush element there, forechecking. So, yeah, I feel good about the 29 goals. Like, he's a pretty consistent guy, although 29 goals came off of massive efficiency. Like, he shot 19.6%. Buddy, that's going to go down. All right. So I do think Strome is probably like a 20 to 25 goal guy. And now, like, we're looking at, a 70 to 75 point players. So yeah, I don't have big takes on any of these guys really besides Reinhardt, but I'm glad I was able to get the goals there. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Nate?
Yeah, I think the Reinhardt one is the most interesting one because of that huge efficiency in that one season. And so everyone knew that there would be some regression from that season. No one was projecting him to hit 57 goals again. But the big question was how much. And some people were really scared of what that might be. And so to be able to kind of accurately thread the needle on that and to say this is about where he comes out and to be actually pretty accurate on the goals and the point scoring there after such a massively efficient season, I think is actually a pretty big accomplishment. So I think that's a big stick tap to you there on Sam Reinhart.
Thanks, buddy.
Biggest hits for points, last category here for myself, Tim Stützle, Jake Gensel, and Travis Konechny. I've talked about this before. I've just kind of always been a bit of a Tim Stützle bear. A lot of people have projected him quite highly to really kind of take off, and he had that one big, 93 points that one year, I want to say.
Damn well it was 93 points, Nate. All right.
All right. But yeah, just based on his career and things he had done prior to that and has done since then, I think it was a 93-point pace. Is that right? 78 points, 78 games, 90 points that year. Then comes back in 23-24 with 70 points in 75 games. This past season, 79 points in 82 games. And I had him projected for, 78.6 points. So pretty much 79 points there. Yeah, it's just a spot where I kind of saw some regression coming. I saw the Travis Green effect coming as well, where I think I pretty accurately saw what DJ Smith had done for the team and to kind of boost some scoring for that team in the previous 2 years, and that there would be some natural regression with the Travis Green effect. For a guy like Stützle, probably more so, like a bit, maybe even more of an effect on Stützle than some other players. And so, yeah, I think just some effects there that I kind of accurately took into account. For Jake Gensel, this was a projection that I did kind of struggle with a little bit going back and forth because obviously it looked like a fit. To play the left wing alongside Point and Kucherov is a place that any left winger in his right mind would jump at the chance to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so from that perspective, you want to, just kind of go all in and say this guy can hit 100 points this year. I kind of chose a bit more of a middle ground there, 40 goal, 81 point projection on Jake Gensel. And he comes out with 80 in 80 games, 41 goals, 39 assists for 80 points. So very close there. Yeah, I think there is just typically going to be some level of getting to know you whenever a player gets to a new spot. For every time there's, a Matt Kachuk in Florida who just detonates on arrival, goes off, there's probably 5 or 6 other cases where even if it works quite well, and it did work quite well for Jake Gensel in Tampa this year, that it doesn't necessarily just go nuclear right off the bat. And so I'll take a look a little deeper, and maybe I will actually end up projecting even perhaps a little bit more for Gensel going into next year. I don't know yet. Haven't dug into it that deeply, but yeah, just kind of taking into account that new player effect in a new place, even if it is a really great situation and you might want to, the tendency is to be a bit over bullish in these kind of situations, I feel like. So that's something that I'm proud of being able to say that I kind of found the middle road there and was accurate with it. And then Travis Konecny in Philadelphia. Again, just a spot where I think I was able to kind of correctly assess that once again, this would be, one of Torts' guys would get all the minutes, but probably wouldn't be super efficient across the board. Wasn't really projecting, big step up in goal scoring efficiency or anything like that. This one I think is a little bit more run of the mill. Like as long as you got the role right there under Tortorella, unless Michkov just absolutely lit the world on fire and changed this team's complexion offensively that much, that Konechny would probably be kind of more of the same a little bit. Was where I ended up with him, and that ended up being right. Any of these three that you want to touch on, Blake?
Not really. I mean, I still have a lot of love for Timmy Stutz. I feel like there's some untapped potential there, but I'm going to have to dig in on that as well, right? Because I had a big projection for him, 85 points. So that's not terrible, but I feel like that, that this is a player to be watching, right? And maybe just kind of hasn't done what he needs to do at this point. But I do think this is a player that could be a superstar, and I don't believe that 90 points was, maybe kind of an outlier. I think that's something that he could achieve moving forward. But it's nice to see Konechny on here too. That's a player that I was higher on going into this year as well, just because of what a horrible power play performance he had last year. Guy had 9 power play points. He had 4 power play goals. He had 5 shorthanded goals last year. This guy's insane. So yeah, obviously had a better year there. That's a guy I think is going to benefit from this new coach and some Michkov exposure.
Yeah. Worth noting too, like that is something that I think is pretty robust about our process, is that we do divide it out by, power play and even strength. And so where we might see some positive regression for Konechny coming on a power play, we might also have negative regression coming from at even strength. And that's how you end up with accurate projections, I feel like, is if you're able to distinguish those game states and the different factors at play there. All right, bring us home, Blake. Biggest hits for points on your side. Alex DeBrincat, Mitch Marner, Nico Hischier. Take it away.
Alrighty, I will. DeBrincat, it's an interesting one for me. I was glad to be able to get that one. I think I had him. What did he get? Like 70 points or something like that. Yeah, I was in the vicinity, and I felt good about that. This is a guy that is a great offensive generator, despite the fact that Detroit was actually a pretty putrid team on the season. Like all their metrics, like the microstat metrics, just awful. Like these guys are horrible on even strength offense. They're terrible at defense, but their power play was really, really good. And the Brinket's a big part of that, right? He got 29 power play points on the year. So I feel like as long as he's on power play one there, like his floor is going to be pretty solid. And by floor, I think 65 points is probably like a floor for DeBrincat. And, he got 70 on the year. That's nice. He was, pretty efficient with his shooting. He was shooting a little bit more than he did the previous season. You got Dylan Larkin there, who's, I think a true, like, he's not a superstar, but he's just a really good player, right? And if he gets to play any time with him, I think DeBrincat is going to be the major benefactor there. Also, Lucas Raymond, a player I was fairly high on going into the season as well. And he had a great year as well. So I don't know. I feel like this is a player that is kind of just a safe player to project. I wasn't taking a risk with DeBrincat. I just kind of looked at what the stats were and kind of sussed out what I thought would happen. And 70 points, bang, easy peasy. Nico Hischier, again, just another player. Like it's weird to hit on a player like Nico Hischier when a guy like Jack Hughes was out of the lineup for as long as he was, and Dougie Hamilton. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel like, oh, I nailed it. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I got the number, and that's good. But like when I was projecting him, I was projecting him as a 2C, with Hughes in the lineup and potentially on the power play there. And so it's kind of it's bittersweet, right? But something that I love to see about Hischier here this season: 29 power play points and 14 power play goals. This guy was a go-to on the Jersey power play, which was excellent, by the way. They had an amazing power play this year, with or without Timo Meier. You know what made it good? Stefan Nason. All right. Oh yeah, shout out to him. But yeah, I mean, Hischier is an amazing two-way player. I think, yeah, we've seen it before. He had 80 points in 2022-23. This guy should probably be closer to that. And I think with Jack Hughes in the lineup, he's probably getting up closer to that. But I feel good about the projection. And then Mitch Marner, this is a guy you called for 100 points this year. I love that. I remember that Nate did a pod, players that could reach 100, and Mitch Marner was on it. I basically just listened to Nate, and then I just erased my projection and put 100 points for Marner, and we got it. No, it's not my process, but yeah, it was a great season for Marner. It was like the revenge tour, right? He was getting all kinds of crap in the media after Toronto's playoff failure again, and this guy was literally playing on high ankle sprain, and Nate's over here just talking yang on the man. But I'm really happy for Mitch Marner. I think that he deserves to get paid. I hope it's with Toronto. But yeah, in terms of the projection, like we know what Mitch Marner is. He's a facilitator, right? He's an amazing, amazing facilitator with, the best new goal scorer in the league in Austin Matthews. And yeah, if he resigns again, I don't see why 100 points per year, like 95 to 100 points, isn't going to be on the table. So I don't know. Why don't you talk to me a little bit about Marner? What did you see this year, and why do you think he was so easily able to get 100 points?
Yeah, I don't think like it was easy. Still had to be quite efficient to get there. I do think that Nye's his emergence, as we talked about a little bit earlier, that had a significant factor here in a season where Matthews, doesn't go off in terms of the goal scoring department, plays through some injury, whatever the case may be there. I think there's a case to be made that Matthews is not as good a fit for Brube's system as even Marner and Nyes are, and that's maybe a tough conversation to have for fantasy purposes, but maybe one we'll have in the lead up to the season. But yeah, I think that Marner is kind of as safe as they come. Maybe he's, on 27 goals this year. Maybe next year he's 31 goals. But assuming that the Leafs do manage to get this done with Marner over the offseason, I think you can kind of write the check here and exactly kind of predict once again what Marner will be. And that is pretty valuable, even if, I think I looked at it in Kickuffle, and his rank in terms of fantasy points per game was like more of a back end of the second round or maybe even early third round level. But the bankability of the player is
Paying for
something,
safety.
yeah, that you might actually want to take a little bit higher. And that's reflected here in your ability to make a really accurate projection and to hit on that there. So, Yeah, just the ability to lock in a player that you know is going to be really good for you and is not going to hurt you and might even, have a absolutely nuclear playoff week for you and win you a matchup. Those kind of things are all super, super valuable and something that we got out of Mitch Marner this year for sure. All right. Well, if you made it this far,
Oh
click
yeah.
the link in the description, join the Discord community, like, rate, review, subscribe, comment, whatever you can do for us. It really would help us out. But that is going to be all that we've got for this episode. Hopefully, it brought you some value, helped you get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. All the advanced stats you heard today came from Natural Stat Trick, terrific free resource. Many thanks to the man there for supplying the music for the podcast. Be sure to check out their Spotify as well. That's it, folks. Much love.